I will get ahead of all the comments saying that is not how it works by prefacing this. I am not from the United States, and much of your understanding of how military enlistment and protocols work probably will not apply here. This actually happened 3 years ago, and there is not very much that can be done to change the situation now. A close friend, who is also a colleague of mine in the same unit, and I were talking about our personal lives recently. It led to me digging up some really deeply buried emotions and thoughts, and I figured I would share everything with a group of strangers. Honestly, I do feel much better having typed all of this out. I apologize if the sections feel a bit disjointed. I am struggling to compartmentalize memories from years ago. I am 22 years old and currently a regular serviceman in my country's Air Force. I enlisted 3 years ago because my country has mandatory military service, and I then decided to sign a contract to become a professional soldier. The moment I began basic military training, I completely cut my mother out of my life. I have siblings, I am the youngest son, and relatives who still connect me to her, and they fully support my decision. I decided to remove my mother from my life after years of psychological abuse and domestic control. I know that might sound overly dramatic to some of you, but please hear me out. My father has not been in my life for some time. He passed away when I was 14. They said it was a serious car accident. I remember being pulled out of class in the middle of the school day and a teacher driving me to the hospital so I could see him one last time. When I arrived, he was barely holding on, surrounded by my siblings, my mother, my uncle, my father's younger brother, whom I will call Uncle C, while my paternal grandparents were still out of the country. When I held his hand, I remember his hand squeezing mine ever so gently. He held on for me. Almost immediately after that, he flatlined. The medical team was there within seconds. They could not bring him back. At the time, my mother seemed to react the way any grieving wife would. But she did not want a funeral. Uncle C was confused at first and offered to cover all the costs if finances were the concern. She said no. She simply did not want to deal with the arrangements or what she described as insincere well-wishers. Uncle C was furious. But as his wife, she had the final say, and my grandparents were not yet back to weigh in. My father was cremated the following morning. There is a process in my country that allows for same-day or next-day cremation, and she used it. I remember being unable to fully process what had happened, and I remember my mother being unusually swift in moving past her grief. Looking back, it should not have surprised me. My mother had been dismissive and abusive toward my father for as long as I could remember. She was not physically violent, or at least had stopped being so, according to my oldest sibling, my sister, who is now 27. My sister told me that when she was younger, she once witnessed my mother slap my father repeatedly across the face after she caught him looking at adult content online. She accused him of adultery and declared that he had damaged the marriage. She left the house that evening and only agreed to return once he met her conditions. Installing a monitoring application on his phone, disposing of his personal computers, and attending healing sessions at our church. I grew up in a Christian church, and I still consider myself a Christian, though I have since left my parents' church. It is one of those large charismatic congregations with healing services and expressive worship. They are not a cult by any stretch, but there are behaviors within that community that I now find troubling. I think my mother was enabled by certain teachings there. My sister later spoke to my father about that incident as a teenager, and he was candid with her. He explained that he and my mother had been going through a difficult period, and that she had been withholding affection from him. He turned to adult content out of frustration. He told my sister to be more discerning in choosing a partner, and that she should not settle for someone like him. My sister told me she was not angry at him for the adult content. She was angry because he spoke about himself with such little worth, and because he had allowed my mother to use one mistake against him for years. She said they cried together, and she never quite saw either of her parents the same way again. My mother's treatment of my father was more psychological than anything else. Every time they argued and retreated behind closed doors, so we children would not hear, though we always did, she would bring up his past behavior. She would tell him he had ruined the marriage and was failing in his role. And yet, at other times, she would praise him warmly in front of us, speaking of him as the model father and provider. I understand now that this kind of inconsistent treatment, hot and cold, approval and punishment, is itself a form of emotional abuse. My mother earned more than my father, and I believe she held that over him. She would bring work home and snap at us whenever we approached her, unless it was entirely on her terms. My father was left to manage the household and the children, even when he was physically unwell. My sister would scold him for it, but he would always say that somebody had to do it, and he would carry on. My siblings and I were made to learn the piano because my mother was a musician herself. She played the harp. And she wanted us to be musically capable too. I have always felt this was partly a way to distinguish herself from my father, who had no musical ability whatsoever, and would joke that the only instrument he could play was the triangle. Piano practice was a miserable experience. There was always shouting and physical correction of our hands. I had it the worst because I struggled to sit still and found reading sheet music extremely difficult. My father would try to intervene in the early days, but she would turn on him too, blaming him for knowing nothing about music and for not caring enough to support us. He would do his best to help us practice when she was not around, hoping we would perform well enough to avoid her reactions. But she always insisted we practice in front of her on weekends. Physical punishment was not common in our home, but my mother was an expert in emotional manipulation. Whenever we did something wrong, or something she perceived as wrong, she would respond with cold silence, visible disappointment, and withdrawal of warmth. Then would come the scolding, which could last for an hour. According to my maternal aunt, my mother's older sister, my maternal grandmother was the same way. She would even lock my mother out of the house for disagreeing with her. It appears this pattern runs through generations of the family. After my father died, my mother's control over us intensified. She criticized my sister's appearance and choices. My sister, wisely, did not fight back. She stayed quiet and eventually earned a scholarship to study in the United States. She now lives in the Pacific Northwest with her fiancé and has not returned to see my mother, though she calls occasionally. My older brother, the middle sibling, is now in Australia, working on an oil rig. He has not returned either, except to visit our grandparents. My mother would berate my brother and me, comparing us to our father in the worst way. I can quote some of what she said because the words are burned into my memory. She told us she hoped we would not turn out like our father with his shameful behavior. She told us she could find another man to be happy with. She told me directly that she never even wanted a third child with our father. She said all men and boys were the same, incapable of self-control, always looking at other women. The worst part was that she could say these things and then shift within 10 minutes to warm, encouraging, loving talk. That inconsistency did serious damage to me. Now I want to address the part of this story I am still most ashamed of. When I was 13, I got into serious trouble at school. Fortunately, the school called my father rather than my mother. My father was a history teacher at another school, and he came immediately, apologizing to my teachers and the principal. When we got to the car, I was furious. At the situation, at everything. And I could tell he was torn between expressing his own anger at me and swallowing it to handle things calmly. He chose to give me a stern but measured talk about my behavior. When he mentioned how fortunate I was that it had been him who was contacted and not my mother, something in me snapped. I said terrible things to him. I accused him of being spineless. I told him that because of his weakness, my mother had been able to run the household like a tyrant, and that any man with real self-respect would have walked away from her years ago. My father did not raise his voice. He did not get angrier. He simply deflated. He asked me quietly whether that was truly what I thought of him. I was too proud and too angry to answer honestly. But I knew I was wrong the moment the words left my mouth. He just shook his head slowly without looking at me and said, "Let us go home." I never got to apologize to him. That is one of the deepest regrets I carry. Do I think he was weak? Perhaps by some definitions, but it was never that simple. He was a man trying to hold a family together under conditions that would have broken most people. About a week before my enlistment, after graduating from high school, Uncle C took me out for dinner. We talked about life and what was ahead of me. Then the conversation turned to my father. Uncle C explained to me why my father had stayed in the marriage despite everything. Custody laws in my country overwhelmingly favor the mother, and my father would almost certainly have lost us. On top of that, the financial burden of child support for 3 children, calculated here regardless of the wife's income, would have been devastating. He stayed to try to give us as full and protected a life as he could. He stayed to shield us from the worst of my mother's moods, as Uncle C called them. When he told me that, I cried hard. Uncle C then told me about a conversation he once had with my father, asking him when the last truly happy moment in his marriage had been. My father's answer was, "When my youngest was born." That was me. Uncle C gave me a stack of letters written in my father's handwriting. My father had written 3 copies of each one for each child. The letters were stories from his life, his time as a military conscript, his years studying, the nights he stayed up late caring for us when we were small. I stayed up all night reading every one of them. I have never felt closer to him since he died. Foolishly, I left the letters on my desk when I went out to visit my former teachers before enlisting. When I came home, they were gone. I did not ask my mother about them. I already knew. I went to her room while she was in the shower and checked her paper shredder. The remnants were there. My father had written each letter on a different color of paper, and the shredded pieces matched exactly. I did not confront her. What would it have accomplished other than another argument and one of her sermons? On the day I enlisted, my mother was not there to see me off. She had a work seminar, she said, and told me she would see me when I was done. Fine. When I boarded the bus, I blocked her number. When the enrollment clerks asked for next of kin, I gave them Uncle C's contact details and my grandparents. When my sergeant later asked why I never called anyone during the evening downtime, I simply told him that my family was no longer together. He seemed to understand. He patted me on the shoulder and left it at that. I am sorry if this was disjointed. I feel somewhat lighter for having written it all down. There is still a great deal of unresolved feeling inside me, but it helps to have people hear it. Thank you, I suppose. We are currently in a long-distance relationship and first met online a year ago. We became exclusive and entered a relationship with the intention of growing together and eventually getting married. We have met in person multiple times. I support having friends of the opposite sex, but I do not allow myself to be in situations that blur the lines other than friendship. My biggest issue right now is that whenever he calls me his baby, his cutie, says he loves me the most, gives me all these special names, and tells me how I am the cutest, I can never believe him. He says the exact same things to these online female friends. I do not feel special at all. My boyfriend is very dismissive and avoidant, and of course I'm anxious. I had been secure until we had a history of him breaking up with me without warning because he believed I was toxic for asking him to cut off his female online friends. He had fallen in love with an online girl, thinking the grass was greener on the other side. What I had asked specifically to respect our relationship was to not engage with women who were romantically interested in him and not to flirt. He took it as cutting off all his female friends because, according to him, any woman talking to him must be attracted to him. He refuses to stop making these women feel good and special by sharing sweet words and creating flirtatious tension. A lot of these girls eventually cut contact with him after he would not make them truly special or pay consistent attention. After he engaged in such romantic sweet words that any woman would love to hear, these girls got hurt, and some even hurt themselves because of it. Eventually, we became exclusive again, but time after time it turned out that he would go outside our relationship to talk and flirt with these girls because they made him happy. They were disposable, did not ask him to change, and simply accepted him as he was. He has tendencies of blaming everything that is out of my control on me, He is aware of this. Every time I flew out to his country a few times to visit him, I would have severe skin reactions near him that made him treat me awfully because of how unattractive he thought I was. He would not see me until I looked more attractive, and because I was unattractive, he refused to spend much time with me or show me love because I was not worth it compared to these girls. He also had a folder of another girl's intimate photos called a private collection from someone he used to talk to during our incredibly short breakup. I never opened it myself to respect his privacy, and he finally admitted what they were a month later. Our 1-year anniversary was recently, and he admitted that he had a full physical repulsion when I congratulated us. Whenever I would be incredibly hurt and cry, he seemed to enjoy it because he tells me my feelings do not affect him. I did my best and made significant progress by losing weight and healing my skin, but I still have scars, which still has not changed his mind. I have taken care of him when he was physically ill when nobody else had really taken care of him before. I tried to do acts of service to make his life easier. I paid for 90% of everything. I loved getting him gifts and getting into his interests and hobbies to make him feel appreciated and learn to speak his love language. Many things he has said nobody had ever done or cared about him enough for. I know it sounds awful, and I question why I have not left yet, but I love him very much. I have seen his best and worst sides of him in person and online, and I have tried really hard to make him happy and understand him. He is very cute when he is childish. He has such a beautiful internal world through his writings. I want to say he makes me feel loved, but I am having a hard time believing if that was real. He does not work or socialize outside, and clearly has some narcissistic perspectives but low self-worth. Regardless, he still has some self-worth complexities, where he does not care what people think, but is very bothered by what people say about him online and absolutely loves attention and validation from online women. The hurt some of these girls get by him if he did not pay attention to them over time. Getting to know him, I saw his vulnerabilities and weaknesses and wanted to support him to love himself the way I did, and to stop seeking validation in these ways with other women, venting about our relationship and flirting with each other. I was also in his shoes before in my late teens and early 20s, and found it absolutely damaging to myself and others. I wanted to prevent him from feeling what I felt before. I never cursed or said anything that would hurt his feelings, because he does not deserve being hurt by me. I care for him. But all the effort, money, love and care I put into our relationship, he said, was not enough and does not mean anything to him. Recently, he had told me that he would rather abandon me than change, and because he loved me, he would prefer to abandon me and treat me badly. In his defense, his perspective of me is that I stress him out in these ways by asking for reassurance because I had a hard time trusting him, wanting him to be genuine and not lie to me, and asking too much from him to be a better person. While these friends ask nothing of him but attention and exchange love. Telling him I am uncomfortable with the way he engages with his Discord flirtatious female friends makes him believe I am controlling. I am hyper-vigilant about these girls who newly followed and interact with him, making him choose between his girlfriend or these friends. I understand how toxic it was to give ultimatums, but I have a hard time understanding why he would prioritize these online romantic friendships over his girlfriend. He has a lot of trauma, but we got together to grow and heal together. But now he says he simply does not want to change. The changes I only asked of him were to stop disrespecting me and our relationship, to stop hurting me, and to enforce boundaries with these friends. He would tell me to just block him and leave him, but he would not block or leave me first. He tells me he wished he loved me only but loves many people. He says I am important and he loves me the most and cares for me the most, but chooses his Discord, female online friends over me. He degrades me and treats them better, and then says he does not want to lose me only because I was the most secure option for a happier future, with how devoted I was in working and building a future that he says is an idealized future where I actually make him happy. He understands that these girls do not mean anything, and he does not care for them, nor do they care about him. He knows that I love him truly and care for him and have proved it. He knows this behavior with women is not sustainable and will not make him happy, and yet refuse to stop flirting with them. Of course, he feels there is no connection or intimacy between us because he removes himself from me and invests it in other girls. He feels uncomfortable with the actual love I show him and does not feel comfortable about receiving real love. He does not want to change despite knowing that it is better for him, and I have been trying to remove all obstacles out of the way to help him grow and lay out the easier path, but he refused. I am very torn. I know you cannot change for someone if you do not want to. I am just caught in between the rifts of what he says to me was real or not, or if he truly does love me. I have saved myself until this age for someone special, and I felt like I was lied to and was prey to a predator, and my self-worth and love was worthless. Self-esteem-wise, I know I can pick myself back up, but it hurts immensely when someone I care about prefers to stay in such a miserable cycle through online connections and not grow into an adult to work for a happier future for himself. I have worked my whole entire life since I was a child to not let my trauma define me or justify hurting other people and build my own future and environment for my kids to thrive in. I am stuck because he definitely needs the help and refuses to change. And I love him so much that my needs for him to respect me and our relationship only throws me into ruminations about why not to understand him. All these people love the online him and how he presents himself with his older pictures and sweet false words and poetry. But I love the real him and the him in real life. He still sees a future with me safe enough to be his wife instead of everyone else, but still will not choose me. How can he realize that I am truly the safest person to actually grow with the patience and love I have for him, and actually choose to? To be honest, my wife cheated on me with her bandmate. We want to fix things, but I feel we cannot unless she goes no contact with the other woman. This means quitting the band, which is devastating her. Is there any way we can make this work without her losing the band? Am I being unreasonable asking for her to go no contact, which inevitably means losing the band? My wife, 42 years old and female, and I, 39 years old and female, have been together for over 17 years. We have had our ups and downs, but I would say that for the most part, we have had an otherwise perfect relationship, except for intimacy. Sure, there were some things about each other, traits and behaviors, that should be worked on. I can be controlling, she can be selfish, for instance. But the only major issue is intimacy. Since nearly the beginning of our relationship, we had periods of drop-off. My drive is higher. I would complain, she would try to fix it, and the first several times we did. About 7 years ago, we had the issue come up again. We did several years of therapy and graduated from it, declaring the issue fixed. Long story short, it was not fixed. The therapy actually made it worse. We both felt pressured to say things were fixed when we did not feel they were. We are both people pleasers, and intimacy turned into a quantity over quality thing with weekly quotas and checkbox conversations replacing passion and connection. We have had a sexually open relationship since the beginning, but we have only each acted on it a handful of times, and neither within the last several years. From the beginning, 2 rules were very clear. First, we are not polyamorous. If you start catching feelings, you have to end it immediately and confess. Second, if one of us is uncomfortable with a particular partner for any reason whatsoever, you have to end it immediately, no exceptions. My wife is in an online band that only meets up to play festivals and tour. The other band members do not live in our area. Mid-last year, my wife became intimate with the singer and her band at a show. She told me about it as soon as she got back. I was happy for her. We had several discussions and re-established updated ground rules such as testing for sexually transmitted diseases. But it turns out she was not open and honest with me about how transformative the experience was for her. She experienced a kind of passion, desire, and enjoyment with her friend that she had not had with me in ages, possibly ever. Additionally, it drew attention to the fact that I had become complacent with physical affection. I take responsibility for it. It is not my love language, but it is hers. My only excuse is that she had been letting intimacy slip again, and I tend to equate intimacy and cuddling in my mind. Less intimacy, less cuddling. If she had simply told me, I would have apologized and made it right immediately. And once she did tell me, I fixed it immediately. Our intimacy life rapidly started deteriorating. I tried to bring it up several times and she brushed me off. A couple of months later, she went to another show with her band and became intimate with her friend again. This is where the feelings started. Not too long after she came back, the intimacy discussion she had been shoving aside came to a head. I became angry, not realizing there were any other issues under the surface, because she had not told me. During the days of arguments and discussions that followed, it came out that first, she was not sure if she loved me anymore, because of the months of reduced affection and confusion generated from the good intimacy with her friend. Second, the impact the intimacy with her friend had on her perception of her own sexuality, desire, and preferences. Third, she had a crush on her friend. I was devastated by all of this and terrified of losing her. We decided to try and fix things. For various reasons, my tendency to be controlling and her tendency to not put in effort. She was supposed to take the reins at repairing things, starting conversations and so on. Almost from the beginning, there were lies, withheld information, and her dodging certain topics, namely the relationship with her bandmate. I tried to bring the issue about her bandmate up several times, specifically because they had another show in a couple of months and would see each other in person again. Each time she brushed me off, said she had to think about it, and wanted to talk to her therapist about it. I tried to be patient. Besides, my biggest issue at the moment was that she was not confident she still loved me, and every day, without having her love being a certainty, was like I was living on half oxygen. I was mostly focused on that, and was terrified and not confident in my position to bring the other issue up more forcefully. After about 6 weeks, I pressed the love issue, telling her I could not be with her if she did not love me. That triggered her to reevaluate her feelings at the prospect of losing me, and she decided she did in fact love me, but that all the confusion had buried it. That was around the holidays. We took some time to just be with each other, spending some quality time together. We both needed a break. But her next show was fast approaching in early January. I tried twice to bring the issue of her relationship with her friend up again. She brushed me off. She only finally brought it up the night before she left for the show. I did not respond well to being cast aside and ignored for so long. We fought. She left. She had never committed one way or the other on whether she would be intimate with her friend again or end it like she was supposed to. But she knew how uncomfortable I was with it. While she was gone, she never messaged me except to say she landed safely. Every single day of radio silence, and without knowing whether she was betraying me, was like a knife through the heart. By the time she returned, I was more hurt and more angry than I have ever been in my life. First, she tried to gaslight me and pretend her not messaging was no big deal, then say it was my fault for not responding to the first text, and things went downhill from there. She had been intimate with her friend multiple times and admitted she was in love with her. I said many hurtful things and ultimately told her she had betrayed me and treated me for months like absolute garbage, like I did not matter at all, without any regard for my feelings. I told her it was over and asked her to go stay at her local friend's house. She said she was sorry and wanted to fix things, but I told her there was no way because I could not ask her to leave her band. She loves this band. It has been the most fulfilling and exciting thing that has ever happened in her music career, and a huge part of her identity is wrapped up in it. Unfortunately, the band basically belongs to her friend, the other woman. After she left, I lay awake literally all night trying to find any possible way we could fix this. The only two choices I could see were, 1, we are over, or 2, she ends things completely with the other woman, which unfortunately and inevitably means leaving the band. The next morning, I asked her to come back and laid that out for her. Since she had been shoving me aside and putting me off, making me sit around in agony for months without answers or commitment. I told her she needed to decide quickly. I gave her 30 minutes to think it over, but frankly I was disappointed that the answer was not immediate. After I pressed her for an answer, she finally said she chose me. I told her she had until 9 in the evening to end things with the other woman and cut her out of her life. I went out for several hours in the evening, and when I returned she was basically passing out drunk and crying. I assumed that meant she did it. She did not. The next day, when I approached her to demand that she show me proof, the one and only time I would ever ask to see her conversations, because I needed to see that she had organically, completely, and unambiguously chosen me so I could start healing, it came out she had not done it. Then things started to fall apart even more. She said she would end it now. I told her to do it. She tried to go call the other woman. I panicked and was forced to tell her I needed to see proof she ended it, but I was left feeling very unsatisfied. I had wanted her to choose me immediately, then abide by the deadline to show she was serious, then to see proof that gave me confidence in her commitment. Instead, she had difficulty choosing, ignored the deadline, and showed me a brief and hurtful conversation that ultimately gave me no confidence at all. Since she did it, her confidence that she made the right decision has been wavering, mostly because of having to give up the band. She told me that if it was just the relationship with her friend, it would not be hard. It is losing her band and everything she has worked for with her music. I feel absolutely terrible about that part. I am happy for her and proud of her for her work with that band, but I just do not see any other way. If she stays in the band, she will have to see the other woman, who during this whole situation revealed she is in love with her too. Hence the switch to calling her the other woman. She will have to talk to her on a regular basis. She has had one foot in our relationship and one foot with the other woman this whole time. I have been made over and over again to feel unimportant and dismissed in favor of the other woman and her own desires. I do not see how we have any hope of fixing things if this lady is still in the picture, but I am grasping at straws. Is there any way we can make this work without her losing the band? Am I being unreasonable asking for her to go no contact, which inevitably means losing the band? Significant other. Let me tell you everything. It all started in May 2022. I was in Nainital, enjoying a family trip. I had just returned to my hotel room after paragliding. We were in the talking phase at that time. Around 8 in the evening, my best friend called me and said, "Let us assume her name is Aditi. Brother, you know Aditi likes you a lot, and you have to say yes to her." I replied, "Brother, does she really like me? Aditi?" He said yes. After some time, she messaged me asking what I was doing. I was relaxing in the hotel and having dinner. At exactly 10:02, she sent her usual hi. I already knew she liked me. We had a very normal conversation. What are you doing? How was your day? And so on. Then at 10:13, she finally said, "I kinda like you more than a friend." I was completely numb and had no reaction at all. I told her I liked her too. I asked her what we should do now. She said, "Of course, a relationship." We both agreed. Around 10:25, I said, "I love you," and sent a heart, which used to be our favorite. She replied, "I love myself too." I said, "I will come and hug you." Then I returned to my hometown. She also lived in the same town. We had forgotten that we were both in 10th class. We started on a very good note with late-night talks. She taught me everything about how periods happen, how things work between boys and girls, and many other things. I felt she was the one. Everything was perfect. 2 months passed, and we had our first kiss. It felt like no other feeling in the world. First we hugged, then we both asked each other, "Are you sure, babe?" We both agreed, and our lips touched. It was the best feeling of my life. After that, we started kissing almost every day after coaching classes. We spent as much time together as possible. Then the 6th month arrived and we became more physical. We did intimate things with mutual interest. What I did not know was that she had started talking romantically with my own best friend. They never did anything physical, but they talked the same way I used to talk with her. When our 10th grade results came out, we both joined coaching in the same city to prepare for the Indian Institutes of Technology joint entrance examination. Things were going very well. But a few days after our first anniversary, I found out she had been cheating. Everything became very complicated, and we broke up for 2 hours. I laughed out loud and messaged her, "Will you ever do this again in your life?" She said, "No, never again." We got back together, and things started to improve. However, I did not know they had started talking again, not regularly, but sometimes on a different identity. When we were about to complete our second anniversary, I told her that I had talked to my ex and she had helped me recover from the trauma. She broke up with me for a whole month. Here comes the twist. She used to use an online chatting platform called Chit Chat, where she talked to random strangers. One of them was a guy named Sean. During one of our breakups, we still used to talk. She spoke nicely to me, but in between she behaved very strangely, which she never used to do before. It felt very suspicious. One day, I got fed up with everything. She was going to her coaching class. I held her hand in the middle of the road and took her to a nearby park. I asked her, "What is the matter, baby? Why are you behaving like this?" She replied, "I do not want to be with you anymore. My mother's health is also not good because they have caught us many times before." She was crying while saying all this. We stood up and went to eat something. I asked for her phone because it felt suspicious. I checked it but found nothing. Then I noticed the Telegram application was uninstalled. I asked her why. She got nervous and started fumbling. I reinstalled it and asked her again what was going on. She stayed quiet at first, then finally said, "I talked to a guy." I asked what was in the chats. She replied, "There are private pictures of mine." I logged into her Telegram and saw she was not lying. I stood up and walked away, taking her phone with me and leaving everything behind. She came running after me. In anger, I slapped her. I know that was the biggest mistake I could ever make. Then I called that guy and warned him never to contact her again. He immediately blocked her, deleted all the chats, and disappeared. She was crying a lot. I could not see her like that. I stood up with her, wiped her tears, consoled her, and asked if she wanted to be with me. She said no. I forced her and insisted she had to be with me. She kept refusing. It was getting very late, so she went back to her hostel. She called her brother and told him only about my mistake, that I had taken her from the road. The next day I went again, hoping to meet her and sort everything out. I was still trying to force her to meet me, but she called the Student Welfare Society. They basically took me away and questioned me. Everything came out in the open. I was left completely alone for a whole day with no one beside me. The following day, after classes ended, I saw her, went to her, and we talked. We sorted out some things. Then we both went back to our hostels. I called her from my friend's phone and suggested we unblock each other. She agreed. We had a great conversation and decided to be friends again and try to make the relationship work once more. After 2 months, we were both returning to our hometown together. While coming back to the coaching city, she told me that her family had found out about us, and she sent me a very long message. At the same time, she posted a story on Instagram. I knew it was probably not true, but I stood by her for 2 days. Then, while we were talking, her phone rang from behind. I knew it was her phone. I called her again and again, but she did not pick up. She had called her elder brother and told him everything about us. He warned that if I contacted her again, he would tell everything to my family. I did not contact her after that. The next day she called me herself and said, "There is a test tomorrow. Study well." I melted again. We started our new relationship on good terms. But now, 2 weeks ago, we had a big fight. Almost a month earlier, I had found some unknown number saved in her Telegram for lectures. The number was saved only in her phone contacts. I asked her what it was. She said she did not know. I kept questioning her over and over. Then one day I found a private video on Reddit that looked very similar to her body. I was very concerned. I went to her directly and asked if it was her. She thought I was doubting her and accusing her of posting it. She did not let me finish my sentence and the fight became very heated. We broke up. All I meant was to ask whether it was from her past or something else, because I had seen that number again. I do not know. I just want her back. She is the most important person in my life. I have begged her so many times. I have pleaded with her to be with me, but she is not showing any interest. I wanted to meet her and sort things out, but she is in college now and does not want to talk. After some days, Things became very unusual and toxic because I was constantly calling her and pressuring her to speak to me using every possible way. One day it got really bad, and in complete desperation I called her mother and told her everything. Our parents got involved, and the matter was finally shut down. Near my birthday, I contacted her from an unknown number. She picked up. I took a deep breath and cut the call. Then she activated the secret identity that only we knew, and we talked again for a week or two. But now she is in another relationship. I do not know what to do. I am completely numb. I will not be able to date anyone now. This was my first relationship and my last. I did everything I could have done for you. I know it might have been very difficult for you too, but I wanted us to be together forever. Goodbye. I hope we never see each other again. I love you with all my heart. I hope he treats you like no one ever will. Bye-bye, love.